have a life plan, which in your 30s includes family?
Absolutely. I don't know what I'm doing in 5 minutes. I really have no idea. I think that's another reason why I work so much, is because at least when you're working, there's somebody who's going to tell you what time you're supposed to be somewhere or something. But I think the key is it's a success-motivated generation for sure. The thing to worry about, or the thing to watch, or what separates the tragedies from the successes is whether or not you determine that it should be success at any price and what price you're willing to pay. I mean, but you know, I think it's possible to do that, but I think that there's always got to be distance. There's always got to be distance. You always got to be able to step outside and say, all right, okay, well, this is fun and this is good and I'm doing well, but it can't be what it's all about. I can't live or die by this.
Sorry I'm so late.
Oh, it's okay. I was just looking around. This is a great bookstore.
That was the next time, you know, we saw each other.
I said, how's your boyfriend doing? And she said, actually, we broke up. And I said, what are you doing for lunch?
We were both single at the time, and that's when we started dating.
He always talked about how great she is. He thought she was the one from the get-go.
I met Tracy in time, and knowing her and falling in love with her, I got to a point where I would step in front of a train for her. Toss the box at her with the ring in it. I think I'm like, here. I mean, you know, I'm not very good at those moments. I think I was pretty awkward about it. Yeah, I kind of did one of those. I kind of, yeah, you want to do this? So she said yes.
I mean, you did have a nice ring.
It really was. You know, it was nice. It was a gift that she came back, you know, into my life. And it's just one of those things, you know, be patient.
Michael J. Fox and Tracy Pollan were married last summer in Vermont.
And so what happened with this wedding is we were inside the inn, and we had a great time, and it was a beautiful wedding and a lot of fun and a lot of celebration. And there were these helicopters going overhead, and so the minister's working that into his sermon and all of that stuff. And it just kind of turned into a fun thing, and it turned into almost like under siege. You know, you become even closer. So we had this like kind of like here in the foxhole. You know, we're no pun intended. We're having a good time.
And in June they had a son named Sam.
This show has been the center of my life for 7 years, and last year after the 6th season, I was lucky enough to convince Tracy to marry me, and you know, this year, as this year is winding down, we're about to have a child, and rightly so at this point in my life. I'm 27 years old. That's my focus. So hopefully whatever it is I'm going to miss personally, whatever security I'm going to miss, I'll get in my domestic situation.
My recollection of the last week on the show was a supreme disappointment, because they gave us a script. It was nothing that seemed worthy of the culmination of 7 years. We all had talked about it being too important, and we were being let down by the show.
We literally did not have a couple of the scenes written until Friday night. That's how completely crippled everybody was.
And then when we came in on the final day, and they had a killer script.
The theme of it, Alex leaving, just played into what everybody was dealing with.
Well, this is a very big deal here. I'm not just going across the street. I'm picking my whole life up, and I'm taking it to New York.
I remember that he is packing to go away to school, and he's excited he's going to New York. And, they had me sing to him. Angry, start spreading the news. I'm leaving today, because if it were me, it would break my heart, it would tear me up.
Well, don't you know how hard it is for me?
I realized I hated so much that I was saying goodbye to this guy.
And I just went over to her, and I put my arms around her, and she said to me, she said, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "For what?" She said, "Because I made this difficult." And I made it difficult because I never knew for real what it is we had.
Michael was just such a presence to me. And maybe going back to the time when I would pick him up, it was just the arc of where we'd gone, where we started, where we went to.
We did the last scene of the show, and it was a thing where I knew that the scene was clean, that is, that we didn't have to do any pickups. So I went backstage, and an AD was there, and he handed me a beer. And I took the beer, and I took a sip of it, and then I heard, "That's a wrap." And, like, the sip of beer went down my throat, and, like, my eyes just opened up, and tears started to come down.
Standing next to Michael, we're taking our bows at the end, and we both just put our arms around each other and wept.
And I cried because I think then, because I was really young, and it was like I was leaving home or something, and what was out in the world, and I didn't know what was out in the world, and I had a wife and a baby on the way, and I'm leaving this thing.
Michael, you know, had started on the show as like a kid, and he was ending the show as a man. And I think when you look at that, it's kind of hard to reconcile. You know, the old fears come up. I mean, is it ever going to be as good as this?
After you'd become a big film star, why did you stay with Family Ties? Loyalty to Goldberg?
Loyalty to Gary, certainly. Loyalty to the character and loyalty to the people. And it was just a flat-out great job, and I really loved it, and I miss it to this day, even though it was, you know, a group decision to stop. But, you know, in 1982, when I started that show, you know, as I kind of said on the talk show circuit for a couple of years after, because people couldn't believe it, but I had no money. I had no money. I owed the IRS like $30,000 or $40,000. I had no furniture. I had no telephone, I had no girlfriend, I had no life, I had nothing. And I got this series. And in a period of about 8 months, I went from destitute to being in the 50% tax bracket. And I had a job that I loved, and I didn't know, I mean, I wanted to be a dramatic actor. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't want to do comedy, and all of a sudden I found out what it was like to make people laugh. I found a new confidence in my ability. I found a niche for myself in the world. I ate on a regular basis, and it just changed my life. And I just couldn't see 4 years later, because of some other turn of events, which was completely related to it and a product of it, that I would turn my back on it. It just was never, I never gave it a second thought. Never for a moment did I ever say I'm going to leave this show. And in fact, we did 7 shows. I only had 7 seasons. I only had a 6-season contract, so I did a year beyond my contract. I just loved the show, and I loved the character, and I loved the way people, I loved how much it was a part of people's lives.
Casualties of War is the biggest career risk Michael J. Fox has taken. His first movie since Family Ties went off the air. Leaving the security of that kind of home can be scary.
That show really meant a lot to you, didn't it? I mean, that really is what made you a famous person.
Absolutely. Beyond that, that show is what made me a self-confident person. It also set standards for me in terms of the quality of people that there is to work with.
It's time for him to move on and grow and test himself in other areas, which he is doing, which he wants to do. It's not like we had an actor who wanted to stay in the cocoon, you know?
Michael J. Fox!
What becomes hard is you get into an area where you're not risking anymore. And I think that's bad creatively.
A real tribute to Mike, and there's only tributes to Mike, that in the 7 years, he never once missed a day holding out for more money. He never asked to have his dressing room enlarged or his parking spot moved or his billing changed. He's billed third on the show, and always was. And the stuff with Mike, that stuff never came up.
Certainly, there were things physically that were difficult when I did Back to the Future, and I did both things at the same time, and I was literally working, 18 to 22 hours a day, and that was hard. But I was young and ambitious, and it was fun. It was a great opportunity, but it was physically exhausting. But I loved every minute of that show. I just had a great time.
When Sean Penn was here, we talked about a very interesting movie called Casualties of War. What was your first reaction when you read the script?
When I first read the script, I just was completely sucked in by the story. I mean, it's just it's like a train wreck. For anybody who doesn't know, it's about a platoon of guys in Vietnam who kidnap a Vietnamese girl from a village and rape her and eventually kill her. And there's one private who I played who is the only one who speaks up and says that it's wrong. It was pretty gripping for me and pretty heady, and I was really honored that Brian asked me to do it.
Tell me about working with Brian De Palma.
Brian is like Bob Zemeckis in that he's incredibly meticulous and incredibly plans out everything very carefully. But at the same time, too, he'll throw it all away if his actors aren't comfortable. It's more difficult for a director to tell a story like that. You know, I think it's more difficult for Brian De Palma to tell that story than it is for Oliver Stone to tell that story because he was there, and therefore the onus is a little more on that director, saying you weren't there, think about how you're telling the story. For me, I played a guy who had just arrived in Vietnam. So in those situations, I tend not to do too much. I mean, why should I sit and study? I mean, I do on my own because I'm interested in these things, but as an actor, it'll do me no good in that role to know the ins and outs of the Tet Offensive or this, that, or the other, because I'm supposed to play this green kid off the plane. So, and in terms of just the physical understanding of what it's like to be in that war situation, I was in Thailand all of about 3 days before I had, like, amoebas with teeth going through my, my digestive tract, and you know, the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, you miss home, you're sick, you know, we were doing military training, you're packing a weapon around it. That kind of puts you into the mindset a little bit.
Backtrack a little bit. One of the reasons I got into acting was because I always said I wasn't crazy about absolutes, you know, and math and science are based on absolutes. You know, 2 + 2 is 4, and that's periodic table of elements is what it'll always be. And acting is fluid, and you can do whatever you want. But in comedy, I was finding that there was a lot of things that if you did it, it would work. If you didn't do it, it wouldn't work. K's are funny. 3's are funny. You know, comedy college with 2 Ks. I mean, all of this stuff. I can see the tally lights. I know when to turn. I know this setup is floated out there. I know how to time it. I know how to, you know, you lift the glass, and you pause for a sec, you look there, you look, and you hear a titter from the audience, you wait for it to get to here, you play it. And it was just really locking in like that for me. And so I thought, wow, you know, the idea of being in a jungle with Sean Penn and Brian De Palma for 4 months, I've got no tricks. I got nothing. I'm just going out there, and I'm young enough and crazy enough to do it. So I did.
All right, now the scene we're going to do here is the one, you know, where you're walking with Meserve.
Besides shooting his movie sequels, Fox is polishing the dialogue for his about-to-be-released film, a Vietnam War picture called Casualties of War.
This is kidnapping, ain't it, Sarge?
Breathless, you know, you ran up beside them.
Directed by Brian De Palma, it is deadly serious. Another chance for the man of comedy, determined to prove himself in a dramatic role.
I can't go. I'm going to be goddamn deserted. My persona is such that people are comfortable with me and relaxed with me. And, you know, that you go, okay, I know this guy. I'll let him be my representative in this movie, and I can relate to it. There are times when you have to say, okay, if you're comfortable with me and you're at ease with me, now let me take you into a very uncomfortable, very uneasy situation.
Never forget that scene when he's outside the hooch and they're abducting the girl. And Michael just is walking back and forth, and he's hearing these sounds from inside the hooch.
Jesus, God.
And you can see on his face the torment and conflict of what he should do, and he's sort of over his head.
Sometimes you're just up against the wall, and you got to go, okay, am I a good guy, am I a bad guy? Do I do the right thing, or do I do the wrong thing?
You guys done this before?
No.
Do you ever drive by all by yourself at night and kind of stare?
No.
Come on, Michael. Come on.
I don't, but I will crane my neck. If I do happen to be going by, I will make sure I don't miss it.
Talk about the Back to the Future 2. Now, this is going to be another one of those huge blockbuster films, isn't it?
It would be nice. I hope so. I mean, I think if what people liked in the first one, there's lots of that in the second one.
And how does this work now? This time they go to
It's really confusing. I don't even get it. I don't get it. But it's funny, but it's tough. It's tough
Now,
to get.
is it true that this film and the third version of this film, the sequel to this film, were shot simultaneously?
We're still shooting the third version, which is really tough because, you know, a movie opened today that I'm not going to be finished for a month and a half, which is really strange because hopefully it'll do well. But let's say today it opened and nobody went.
Yeah.
Well, I got to do it for another month and a half.
Another...
So I'll be like, wow, why are we here?
Now, have you seen this film?
Yeah.
Now, is it as good, do you think, as the first one?
I like it. Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah. And the critical response has been great. And apparently people went to see it this morning and are seeing it now. And yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's really fast-paced. It's, you know, we pick up where the last one left off. We go to the future. My kid's screwed up. I'm a mess in the future.
You like your own sister or something, right? Or
I play my daughter.
You play your daughter. I see.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I play myself at 47. I play my son, and I play my daughter.
Yeah.
And you know, it's nice to have an excuse to wear a dress. You know, it was kind of weird. I didn't know I'd like it.
A real man doesn't need an excuse to wear a dress.
I guess.
Well, I hope it's a huge success. I can't imagine it not doing great.
Well, it would be nice.
Yeah.
Go and see it. You'll like it.
All right, we'll do that.
And you're, you know, this movie, this Back to the Future 3. Now, I'll be frank about this. Back to the Future 2, I was skeptical that you guys could shoot two films simultaneously, one being a sequel to the other. I thought this, you know, pages are going to get shuffled. You're not going to know where you are. And now people are telling me that this Back to the Future 3 is just terrific.
Yeah, it's well, we shot them consecutively, like not simultaneously.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know, like we shot them in one 11-month period. We shot both movies. And part 2 was just plain confusing anyway. I mean, it was, just, I mean, it was fun, and I liked it a lot. But I mean, it took a lot of work to get the thing. And I mean, I love 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're out on a location somewhere in a rainy parking lot, and you're having a cup of coffee, and someone comes up and goes, "So now, if you went back to the thing and you didn't," and you're like, "No, I don't know." No, I show up, I say things, I move around, the guy takes my picture, and I don't know anything about time travel. But,
so this guy thought you might be an expert on time travel?
No, but people do. Science fiction buffs think I know about time travel. I'm like, read Ray Bradbury. Don't talk to me. But part 3 is much more. It's lower. You know, it's much more like the first one, and it's very sweet and very slow paced.
It's all done as a completely different. It's like a Western.
Yeah,
suddenly.
It's a Western.
Yeah. And the whole thing, top to bottom, is a Western?
Well, I kind of am in 1955, and I got to get to the West, and then when I'm in the West, I got to get back to 1985, and there's all that. But principally, it takes place in the West, which is really fun because I think a lot of kids never got to see Westerns on the big screen and see what that looks like, you know, and I think that's why, you know, possibly why it's doing well.
Are you finished now with Back to the Future movies?
Absolutely.
Is it a trilogy and that's it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, they might, you know, they won't. If there's another one, I won't be in it. There'll be another kid.
Yeah.
I'm not a kid anymore.
And you're
47 years old. Gee, Doc.
I'm doing a movie right now in New York with James Woods and John Badham directing about a. I always laugh, you know, whenever you know some actors like I don't know playing a, you know whatever playing a drug addict or something, and they're like, yeah, I shot heroin for you know a couple weeks to get into the role, and then I threw myself down some stairs, and and it always kind of cracks me up because you know I basically like read the script, show up, and go, okay, where do you want me to go? So I always was looking for a chance to kind of make fun of that, and this movie is about a guy who is an actor named Nick Lang, and he makes these movies that are giant, big box office movies, but they're all crap. They're called Smoking Gun movies. His name is Joe Gunn, and the movie is Smoking Gun 1 and Smoking Gun 2. Anyway, so he wants to play a cop, and he wants to be taken seriously, so he goes to New York and hangs out with the toughest cop in New York, who's played by James Woods, who hates his guts. And it's just about people who really work for a living and people who do what I do. Getting together and hating it.
Come on. Here, you want to do this? So she said yes.
I mean, you did have a nice ring.
It really was, you know, it was nice. It was a gift that she came back, you know, into my life. And It's just one of those things, be patient.
Michael J. Fox and Tracy Pollan were married last summer in Vermont.
And so what happened with this wedding is we were inside the inn, and we had a great time, and it was a beautiful wedding and a lot of fun and a lot of celebration. And there were these helicopters. Successes is whether or not you determine that it should be success at any price and what price you're willing to pay. I mean, but you know, I think it's possible to do that, but I think that there's always got to be distance. There's always got to be distance. You always got to be able to step outside and say, all right, okay, well, this is fun and this is good and I'm doing well, but it can't be what it's all about. I can't live or die by this.
Do you have a life plan which in your 30s includes family?
Absolutely. I don't know what I'm doing in 5 minutes. I really have no idea. I think that's another reason why I work so much is because at least when you're working, there's somebody who's going to tell you what time you're supposed to be somewhere or something. But I think the key is it's a success-motivated generation for sure. The thing to worry about, or the thing to watch, or what separates the tragedies from the...
Sorry I'm so late.
Oh, it's okay. I was just looking around. This is a great bookstore. That was the next time, you know, we saw each other.
I said, no, how's your boyfriend doing? And she said, actually, we broke up. And I said, what are you doing for lunch?
We were both single at the time, and that's when we started dating.
He always talked about how great she is. He thought she was the one from the get-go.
I met Tracy in time, and knowing her and falling in love with her, I got to a point where I would step in front of a train for her, toss the box at her with the ring in it. I think I'm like, here. I mean, you know, I'm not very good at those moments. I think I was pretty awkward about it. Yeah, I kind of did one of those.